In 2004, Blockbuster held a leading position in the video rental market with 9,100 stores, 84,300 employees, and $6 billion in revenue. Approximately $800 million of that revenue derived from late fees, a practice that generated significant customer dissatisfaction. 6 years later, the company declared bankruptcy with $1 billion in debt, and its operations had largely ceased in 2000. Reed Hastings and Mark Randolph met with Blockbuster executives in Dallas and offered to sell Netflix for $50 million. The offer was turned down by 2025. A single Blockbuster store operates in Bend, Oregon. This location derives 80% of its revenue from merchandise, including T-shirts, capitalizing on nostalgia, while the remainder of the former chain has closed. This development did not stem from bad luck. It arose from specific strategic decisions and issues of timing. Those in positions of control opted to preserve the existing business model instead of adapting to new conditions. Late fees functioned as both a key revenue driver and a point of customer friction. The rejection of the $50 million proposal carried substantial costs for what had been an $8 billion company. The central contradiction involves a business that had defined standard home entertainment practices failing to detect fundamental changes. In those practices, its considerable market power could not counter the emerging shifts that were occurring. The outcomes were far-reaching. Dallas in 1985 marked the starting point. David Cook, a software engineer experienced in tracking oil rigs for Texas drillers, identified an inefficiency in video rental operations. Tapes were scattered, inventory was unknown, and customers faced constant frustration. His wife suggested entering the business. Cook responded by building the first Blockbuster store around a radical operational concept: computer-controlled inventory supported by a hub-and-spoke model. A central warehouse predicted demand and shipped precisely what each store required. This eliminated empty shelves on peak nights and removed guesswork from stocking. The initial store opened in Dallas with 8,000 titles, a large selection for the period, and a clean, family-friendly presentation that deliberately excluded the adult sections common among competitors. The approach proved effective. Scaling, however, proved difficult. Debt accumulated rapidly. Franchising created operational inconsistencies. Within 2 years, Cook faced cash shortages and limited options. In 1987, Wayne Huizenga entered the picture. Having built a large enterprise in waste management by consolidating fragmented industries, Huizenga and his partners invested $18.5 million to secure voting control. Cook resisted the shift. Internal clashes followed. Within months, Cook departed. Huizenga applied the same disciplined consolidation strategy: acquire competitors, enforce uniform standards, and expand aggressively by opening a new store every 17 hours at the height of growth. He transformed Blockbuster into a standardized national chain with bright lighting, consistent blue and yellow branding, and strict operational controls. By 1988, the company had become the largest video rental chain in America with more than 400 stores. The core problem it solved was straightforward yet powerful: convenience and broad selection delivered at scale. Customers no longer searched. They arrived, selected, and departed efficiently. Yet the foundation for later difficulties had already formed. Late fees quickly accounted for 10 to 16% of revenue. The stream was profitable and addictive, while quietly building customer resentment. Huizenga's approach centered on power achieved through standardization and acquisition. In 1994, he sold the company to Viacom for roughly $8.4 billion. The enterprise he left behind relied on physical control of the final mile of entertainment delivery. No participant at the time foresaw that the same last mile could disappear. The 1990s represented a period of sustained market control. Huizenga's operational framework accelerated through targeted acquisitions of major video ARLs and numerous regional operators. International expansion followed. Franchises were repurchased to tighten operational oversight. Store numbers surpassed 3,600 by 1993. The formula emphasized relentless efficiency through predictive inventory systems, extensive title availability reaching 10,000 per superstore, and a repeatable customer experience that became embedded in daily routines. Friday evening visits evolved into standard date nights, family outings, and social activities. Several operational innovations reinforced the advantage. The original computer system evolved into advanced logistics capabilities. Store locations targeted high-traffic suburban sites, converting real estate holdings into a structural barrier against new entrants. Hollywood studios valued the relationship. Because Blockbuster's volume enabled large upfront purchases and 90-day credit terms, the chain could rent titles multiple times before payment, creating a financial float that served as an internal funding mechanism by the late 1990s. Blockbuster maintained an unassailable position. It reduced independent operators and smaller chains through volume-based competition. Market share reached 40 to 50% of the $8 to $10 billion U.S. video rental sector. Revenue advanced toward $4 billion and then $5 billion. Late fees alone generated hundreds of millions in pure profit linked to customer oversight lapses. Quantitative indicators demonstrated comprehensive market capture. The company maintained 65 million registered customers worldwide. Brand recognition approached 100%. Cultural integration was evident as phrases associated with the experience entered everyday language. Executives operated with the confidence of established victors. A psychological pattern developed. Repeated success across decisions reduced willingness to examine underlying assumptions. Subtle limitations existed within the model. The entire value proposition depended on physical locations, extended leases, and the premise that consumers would continue traveling for entertainment. Huizenga noted potential shifts and briefly explored cable and entertainment concepts. Yet he completed the sale at the height of performance. Viacom assumed control and benefited from the subsequent DVD transition. Revenue reached nearly $6 billion in 2004. The structure appeared permanent. No internal analysis fully connected the technology that had enabled inventory superiority computers with the coming obsolescence of physical inventory itself. Timing determined outcomes. And Blockbuster's timing window was closing. In 2004, Blockbuster reached its highest level of market influence, with 9,094 stores worldwide, 84,300 employees, and revenue between $5.9 billion and $6 billion. The company functioned as the primary gatekeeper for home entertainment. Studios engaged in negotiations with a combination of caution and respect. Customers structured weekend plans around the established store format. Late fees, though unpopular, contributed $800 million directly to profits, representing roughly 16% of total revenue. The cultural role was comprehensive. Blockbuster influenced release schedules, shaped content production decisions, and established weekly home entertainment as a routine activity. The brand strength was such that imitators adopted similar formats yet achieved only marginal results. Hollywood Video and comparable operators competed for a residual market share. Blockbuster appeared secure because it controlled immediate access to new releases across neighborhoods. Internally, the atmosphere of control fostered confidence. Executives viewed operational scale and execution as an insurmountable barrier. Boardroom discussions reinforced existing approaches. Performance measurement focused on store counts rather than future adaptability. No systematic review questioned whether the core model contained inherent vulnerabilities. The perceived invincibility originated from prior success. Every earlier transition, from VHS to DVD or from independents to chains, had been absorbed through acquisition or superior execution. The organization had consistently prevailed. This pattern created an implicit assumption that future threats would follow the same pattern. Peak dominance extended beyond financial metrics to a collective mindset. The scale achieved made the concept of fundamental disruption seem implausible, while Blockbuster maintained its market position. An alternative approach developed 2,000 miles away in Scotts Valley, California. In 1997, Reed Hastings returned a copy of Apollo 13 to a local Blockbuster store and incurred a $40 late fee. The experience prompted him and Mark Randolph to establish Netflix as a DVD by mail service built on a subscription model without due dates or late fees. Red envelopes arrived directly at customer homes. In its initial phase, Netflix operated at limited scale and remained unprofitable, allowing easy dismissal as a niche experiment. Blockbuster leadership characterized it as an unproven digital concept. The model, however, addressed specific customer pain points that had accumulated over years. By 2000, Netflix had achieved modest scale while maintaining a focused strategy. Hastings traveled to Dallas and proposed that Blockbuster acquire 49% of Netflix for $50 million, with Netflix managing the online channel. The discussion concluded without agreement. Blockbuster saw no strategic necessity to purchase a loss-making service while physical stores continued to produce strong cash flow. The emerging challenge was defined less by current size than by superior timing and alignment with customer preferences. Netflix competed not on title volume or location density, but on convenience without penalties. Concurrently, broadband infrastructure expanded and DVD formats shrank. Early Redbox kiosks introduced another low-overhead alternative, Blockbuster. Leadership noted the entrance in internal assessments, yet classified them as peripheral. The analytical shortfall was structural, when an organization's advantage rests on a single delivery model. Alternative models appear inferior until performance data demonstrates otherwise. The threat stayed below detection thresholds because it had not yet affected financial results. Timing continued to shift incrementally with each customer migration. By the mid-2000s, initial performance signals emerged. Store traffic began to decline, while Netflix expanded at annual rates of 50 to 100%. CEO John Antioco, appointed during the Viacom period, recognized the pattern. He initiated several changes. Removal of late fees at an immediate cost of $200 million in annual revenue. Launch of Blockbuster Total Access, combining online orders with in-store pickup and return. An allocation of $200 million to develop Blockbuster Online. The initiatives aligned with market direction, yet created short-term financial pressure. Profits decreased, shareholders expressed opposition. Activist investor Carl Icahn acquired a position and initiated a proxy contest focused on spending levels and executive compensation. Within the organization, internal divisions intensified. Ku Jimkees and aligned executives advocated protecting the core store operations above all other priorities. Conflicts arose between quarterly performance targets and longer-term positioning. Antioco secured initial board support, yet ultimately lost the internal contest. In 2007, a compensation dispute influenced by Icahn resulted in Antioco's departure. Keys, previously with 7-Eleven, assumed leadership. His directive emphasized restoring profitability. He reinstated late fees, reduced investment in online initiatives, and reinforced commitment to physical retail. The divisions revealed both psychological and structural constraints. An organization structured around centralized control struggled to accommodate calculated risk when immediate financial impact appeared. Leadership disagreements translated into policy choices that prioritized continuity over adaptation. The operational system that had delivered consistent execution now applied the same discipline toward maintaining an outdated configuration. The critical decisions formed a sequence rooted in established patterns of control, assessment of threats, and evaluation of timing. The first involved the 2000 rejection of the Netflix acquisition. The $50 million offer for an entity that later reached a valuation exceeding $300 billion reflected confidence in existing scale. Leadership concluded that market dominance rendered external disruption irrelevant. A second decision concerned continued reliance on late fees. Following the temporary elimination under Antioco, Keys restored the practice. The immediate revenue contribution proved difficult to forego. Leadership operated under the assumption that profitability required customer penalties rather than frictionless service. This choice sustained customer alienation while Netflix cultivated loyalty through the absence of such penalties. A third decision delayed and limited the digital transition. When Blockbuster eventually introduced streaming, the effort trailed competitors by multiple years. Studio relationships faced tension because existing debt levels and lease obligations required steady cash generation. Netflix, by contrast, directed resources consistently toward content and technology infrastructure. A fourth decision involved the influence of activist investors and board dynamics. Icahn's involvement emphasized near-term margins. The board, shaped by years of successful execution, selected the executive promising immediate financial recovery over the one highlighting structural risk. A fifth decision reflected incomplete recognition of concurrent competitive vectors. Redbox challenged on price and accessibility through kiosks. Streaming challenged on instant availability. Blockbuster responded by reinforcing store density, the metric relevant to prior competition. While consumer behavior migrated toward home-based delivery, multiple integration opportunities existed across mail, kiosk, and streaming formats. The organization instead defended the physical retail configuration that was already contracting. A sixth factor stemmed from the debt structure accumulated during expansion. Aggressive growth and acquisitions had created a balance sheet with substantial obligations. When revenue moderated, interest expenses constrained flexibility. Later restructuring efforts between 2008 and 2010 occurred after the window for effective repositioning had narrowed. Each choice reinforced the others. Prior success diminished openness to contradictory data. Short-term financial logic overrode long-term positioning. The established pattern of correct decisions created resistance to acknowledging a changed environment. Blockbuster identified emerging elements of the future, yet elected not to act on them within the required time frame. Between 2008 and 2010, performance metrics deteriorated sharply. Store closures increased. Revenue declined as customers shifted to Netflix, Redbox, and initial streaming platforms. Debt servicing requirements intensified. The decisive event occurred in 2009 and 2010 when studios, responding to bankruptcy indications, altered payment terms to cash on delivery. Approximately $300 million in working capital disappeared immediately. The credit float that had supported operations for decades ended. On September 23, 2010, Blockbuster filed for Chapter 11 protection with nearly $1 billion in debt. Store numbers had already contracted significantly. Workforce levels fell from 84,300 to approximately 25,000 and continued declining. Customer retention eroded. Late fees that once supported expansion now symbolized operational weaknesses. Final internal deliberations confirmed the trajectory. Executives observed the contraction of the network they had been tasked to preserve. Restructuring initiatives did not restore viability. In 2011, Dish Network acquired remaining assets for $320 million, a fraction of the prior $8 billion valuation. The majority of stores closed. The DVD mail operation terminated. Streaming development efforts ended. The failure was not incremental attrition, but a rapid structural breakdown. The same capabilities that had enabled rapid expansion, extensive real estate commitments, large inventory purchases, and supplier relationships, beast the liabilities that accelerated decline when revenue contracted. Timing determined the outcome. Adaptation occurred at a scale sufficient to generate losses, but insufficient to secure survival. Dish Network attempted to maintain select locations, but encountered sustained losses. By 2013, nearly all company-operated stores had closed. The brand persisted solely through intellectual property rights. In 2025 and 2026, a single franchise location continues operating in Bend, Oregon. It functions as a tourist site and informal museum. Merchandise sales constitute 80% of revenue. New releases arrive through Walmart and Target because studios no longer provide direct supply. The manager and remaining staff operate with recognition of the historical context. Educational groups visit documentaries, record the site. Community events mark the legacy of an organization that no longer exists elsewhere. The remaining infrastructure consists of former locations, repurposed as retail spaces, gyms, or parking areas. The original signage and customer rituals have disappeared. Blockbuster's trajectory illustrates a human process shaped by power, timing, and decision consequences rather than technology alone. Generates an appearance of permanence. When performance metrics consistently validate the current model, examination of the model itself diminishes. Late fees exemplified the trap. Profitable enough to sustain leadership focus, yet sufficiently unpopular to create an opening for alternatives. Organizations inherit the decision framework of their leaders. Confidence derived from control translated into reduced visibility of external change. The 2000 meeting response reflected a broader culture unable to contemplate displacement. Internal conflicts between short-term protection and long-term positioning demonstrated how incentives and authority structures can undermine continuity. Several principles apply across contexts. Customer friction represents potential opportunity when one participant monetizes it while another removes it. Timing frequently outweighs scale when an early entrant aligns with shifting preferences. Adaptation demands acceptance of short-term sacrifice because existing revenue streams cannot be fully protected during transition. Debt and fixed assets limit maneuverability when market conditions change. The underlying dynamic is that enterprises do not fail solely from external competition. They fail when those who built their success lose the capacity to modify the model that created it. Power maintained without corresponding openness to change accelerates decline. Blockbuster did not forfeit the market through oversight. It forfeited the willingness to revise the framework that had established its position. Market conditions continued forward independently of any single organization's preferences. What patterns of protected power versus adaptation might be visible in other sectors today?